Kia ora and welcome to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod. So much to talk about this week. We've got RTS coming back early. We've got the Lions, which of course we'll dissect in a great amount of detail because James Parsons has spent his entire weekend watching it and rewatching it and rewatching it. And we've also got what is going to happen in the Rugby Championship and the Bledisloe Cup. Plenty to talk about. I'm Ross Carl. Joining me, Bryn Hall, James Parsons for another Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Let's start with RTS. I'm fired up about this. He is coming home early and we're going to see him play. When does he play for Auckland?
North Harbour.
Auckland, mate.
For North Harbour.
When does he play? I suppose they'll want to get him into the environment as soon as possible. I don't think his transition will be as challenging as, say, when Benji came back. I think he had quite a stronger schoolboy presence in rugby and then made the move to league. So it'll be where he finds himself. Does he work his way in from fullback or on the wing, because that's potentially a position where there's not as much change, or do we see him in the midfield? You know, TJ Faiane obviously going to Japan. It does create space and opportunity in the midfield there at Auckland.
I think it's a great thing that he's coming back early as well. If we talk around the example around Benji, is he missed the Mitre 10 Cup. He had the opportunity to come to the Mitre 10 Cup, and for whatever reason the coaches just believed, no, we'll get you in for the super season. And he actually, talking to him during that process, he said, I should have actually gone back and played in that Mitre 10 Cup just to be able to iron out a few things, get used to it, especially when he was playing at 10. It's a little bit different. Obviously, RTS will probably might go into the fullback and winger role, which is a little bit easier than a 10, but it's a great opportunity for him to come back, get himself ingrained back into what he did. He did play a lot at school, played against him a lot, so he does have that familiarity of what it does to be a rugby player, but obviously, again, it's changed a little bit in his time when he's at school, so I think it's a great call for him to come back, and great for Auckland as well.
I think it's great for the Blues as well, because obviously the media hype, had he not potentially played this Auckland season, comes in really heavy on that Blues pre-season and going into next year. So I think it's awesome in that sense, because then he'll have some runs on the board. People will know what he's about, where he's going to play, because they would have seen it at Mitre 10 Cup level, and then it makes it a little bit more of a seamless transition. Of course, there will always be hype around Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, but I think to a lesser extent, having his presence in the Bunnings NPC.
So you're the Auckland coaches. How do you work this? You give him a couple of weeks in squad, give him a bit of time off the bench. Like, how do you play this out?
Well, he's coming back this week, hopefully. Yep. So I think he's going to have a bit of time, get him ingrained into the group, and being able to give him a little bit, 1 or 2 weeks to be able to understand what the terminology and what the maps are, and taking a bit of time in that. He's quite fortunate. He does have another week, and then there's obviously next week. So I'd probably see him coming off the bench just to be able to get a few, 20, 30 minutes to be able to play on the wing or fullback, and then throughout the duration of the season you might change a little bit where he gets coming in starting. But I think it does take a little bit of time to transition with just the maps. It is a little bit different. Talking to a guy, even Matt Duffy, when he came back as well, just the understanding of like the different maps, the different roles within the position that you do play. It's a little bit different from 15 or 14 and then going into the midfield as well. So probably a bench role to start with, possibly, depending on if there are other players here. There might be injuries, might due to him maybe start up a little bit earlier, but I think that bench role will be able to come in and just find his way early in the competition.
You both played with Duffy. Duffy, of course, was an All Black probably within 2 years of coming back. What did he say to you, Jipper, about the major challenges within those maps that he found in comparison to rugby league?
I don't know if he talked to me about the transition of maps, but I think what he did say is him having the ability to take time to find his role. Like he was automatically expected coming out of the Storm to be a leader, and I think the one thing in the stance that he did take was like, I acknowledge that I've got a presence in that leadership space, but I think it's best for me and my rugby journey just to step away from those groups and really just knuckle down and nail my performance, and that'll be leadership on its own. And I think that was a big step in the right direction for him, is to take all that extra pressure of a player in terms of meetings and leadership group and holding people accountable. He wanted to, I suppose, earn his stripes, so to speak, in the environments he went into. And then once he did that with good performances and then making the All Blacks, it made him quite a strong personality in both Harbour and the Blues until he left to Japan.
Yeah, I think some of the things he did talk around certain things was just a little you take for granted as a rugby player. Like if you're playing rugby your whole career, your whole life, then those are just those little things that happen in rugby that just come second nature to you because you're just so used to it. those kind of things take a little bit of time. So, whether it be, the last person arriving to a ruck, you don't have to go in there, so you don't have to waste all your energy to go there. Or it's the backfield cover of a pendulum, wingers up, or he's back in defence and seeing what the picture is, So those little things, it takes a little bit of time, but obviously they've got a great coaching staff at Auckland and a lot of great players there to be able to upskill Roger as fast as he can. I think it's just really important that he has had the opportunity to go back and play in Auckland to be able to iron out a few things like Jip said, because the expectation when he does come next year, he's a marquee signing for the Blues moving forward, and you want to be able to best prepare him to go for that rugby championship next year. Sorry, the Super Rugby next year.
I think it could be rugby championship too. Good fortune telling. I think it needs to be a collaborative approach as well, like include Roger in the conversation and the coaching group, and iron out a plan that's going to work best for something he feels comfortable with, and the coaching group, because I think there would be a want to utilise him and get him out there, because there's no denying his skill set. But like Bryn said, around those sort of intricacies in terms of back play and the way the game's managed, whatever role he plays, whether it's in the backfield or in the midfield, it's they're some of the harder positions in terms of that. So I think making sure that he's ready to go when he's out there, and I think like you said with a bench role, we're talking about him having the ability to cover midfield, wing. It does suit a man in a 23-man squad to sit on the bench and I suppose watch a game unfold and then impose himself late.
Yeah. How many voices do you want in his ear? Because you obviously got what Auckland wants and what the Blues want, and they're not necessarily the same thing. And when a guy is learning a game or relearning a game, you don't want him hearing too many differing opinions on how things should run.
I presume that probably Rangi, Leon and the Auckland coaching staff, we have a pretty good plan around what that's going to look like. So you are right, there's going to be obviously a lot of info that's going to be coming at him from the Auckland coaches. That's going to be the environment that he is going to be in, but I definitely reckon that the likes of Leon and the coaching staff with the Blues will be able to connect with the Auckland group and be able to say, here's our envision, what we have envisioned for Roger next year. But then again, Auckland might have something a little bit different, where they might need to play him in a position that he might not play at the Blues. But I definitely reckon there'll be a plan around the Blues and Auckland coming together and marrying up a plan for Roger to be able to make him best prepared coming in for that for Bunnings and Super Rugby next year.
I think there's a lot of trust within the region. The Blues, obviously the nucleus of Harbour, Northland and Auckland, and the programs and what players are going back to and how they're provided and implemented. So I think they'll obviously have an opinion, but they'll also trust the Auckland environment to do what's right. At the end of the day, Auckland want them to play well, and so do the Blues. So they're after the same end goal, and I think they'll see this as a bonus opportunity to grow Roger before getting their hands on him and getting a bit of footage and see how they can be coachable. But I think it'll be mainly within the Auckland environment that he'll hear from.
There's going to be some bums on seats during the Bunnings NPC.
Yeah, hopefully. He certainly, even when he pushed himself up into that sort of sixth playmaker role for the Warriors, you can see he has the ability to play in that front line, set up his outsides, but more importantly, his footwork and ability to turn half a gap into something. And, even if he gets through, two defenders, his offload game is there from rugby league as well. So I think it's really exciting for what we can see in Bunnings NPC.
And if you think around like counter-attack ability, that's massive in New Zealand and Bunnings as well. He's going to be able to light it up in that, you do have the kick battles and go one or two kicks here and there, and then you've just got the big boys in the middle. Imagine Rog being able to fly around there and being able to, if I'm probably even as a halfback, you get him one-on-one with his stepping ability. It's going to be great for Auckland, and it's going to be great for the competition to be able to see someone with that kind of attacking ability.
In the long term with the Blues, though, you've got a guy who, within the Blues structure, when you look at the packed outsides and obviously Rico in the midfield, there seems to be a hole at 12, but a guy who also needs to be able to counter-attack because that's one of his great strengths. Are they going to have to kind of come up with a fusion of roles for him?
Oh, look, again, I just think it's going to have to unfold and see how he performs best, because at the best you want players happy where they're playing, and if he's comfortable and happy in that position, then that's where it'll be. But it creates competition. I've said it time and time again, the reason the Crusaders have gone back-to-back titles so many times is when one falls over, another guy steps in and nothing really changes. So it's about having that depth in the squad so that we're not reliant on one or two players. It's that competition during the week, so that brings the best out of the 23 that are chosen for the weekend.
Okay, let's get on to the Lions. I know you're psyched about it. Tell us, what was it like at the Parsons household? Were you up at 3 in the morning? Were you watching on the My Sky?
No, sleep's important. You've got to get that sleep. So I was definitely watching on the My Sky. If it was the All Blacks, it might be something different. But watched it in the morning. It just, always exciting Lions tours, I reckon. It's like, I was trying to explain to my wife, because I was obviously quite into the game on the couch, and she's like, man, you're into this game, like it doesn't even involve like any New Zealand side. And I was like, but the Lions are like, there's a World Cup and then there's a Lions tour, for us here in New Zealand every 12 years, every 4 years, for the other two nations. And it's just exciting to see, I suppose, all those nations combine into what I think is a pretty strong outfit and well drilled side in the Lions. And coming against, I was just so excited after that South African A game to see South Africa play after so long, not getting to see them as world champions, and you can certainly see why they are world champions, the way they performed.
Where was the winning and losing of this game?
Oh, I think obviously just with the game, a lot of kicking, a lot of Northern Hemisphere kind of play. So, I thought the South Africans did really well in that first half with their kicking strategy, with Faf de Klerk doing a lot of the kicks, not just box kicks, but different variety of kicks. And I thought the Springboks defence was outstanding in that first half. And probably the Lions in that first half gave away a few penalties in the early part, even though they had 8 penalties throughout the whole game. Predominantly that first half, they gave away the 12 points with penalty kicks. And then I thought in the second half, the Lions did really, really well around their kicking, like the likes of Price, and when Conor Murray came on as well with the execution of their kicking game. A funny stat is, there was a lot of kicks in the game. There was 37 from the Springboks, and there was 28 from the Lions, but I found the ability that the Lions actually wanted to play a lot more footy. They had 132 passes where the Springboks had 77, so they actually tried to play, but when they didn't have the ability to play and it was a good defensive line, they had great kicks from Bigger and through Conor Murray and Price as well to be able to marry that up. So that's what I've really liked to see, what I'd like to see from the Lions. They've got the ability, they do have that Northern Hemisphere style that we're so accustomed to seeing, but they do want to have the ability to be able to play and have opportunities to be able to try to score through the attack, where obviously the Springboks, I think they just found like they wanted to play the possession game, back their defence, and probably their defence in the end with penalties. They had 14 penalties, which is probably the telling stat for the game. But yeah, I think the second half they just came on a lot better with their kicking execution, and I thought their set piece as well, their maul and their scrums came into the forefront in that second half and really imposed themselves in that game.
The Boks were very happy to kick the ball out, weren't they? They didn't want to give them a chance.
Yeah, I think they were. Look, for me, the winning of the game was Alan Wynne-Jones' mindset after half-time and kicking to the corner. I thought if they just took the 3 there, we were just going to go along the same. And he just changed the momentum, changed the psyche, I suppose, of the Lions, and them getting over for that try was massive. I know it didn't take them ahead, but it sent a message to me, like they were clumsy in the first half, and I think they'll admit themselves, there was that line out not straight, and from there they kicked long, got a penalty turnover that was 3 points. So a lot of the points were on the back of things the Lions could have controlled in terms of Pollard's ability to go for 3. So, sometimes in their line out guys didn't even get up. So it looked like a side that had been picked on form but wasn't cohesive. And I know we've used that a lot since speaking to Ben Darwin, but that's what it looked like. And then it's like Wynne-Jones just said, Alan Wynne-Jones just said, I'm going for this. We're going to the corner. We're going to get the business done. And they did it. And that was sort of just the sort of turning point. And I think the kicking game, obviously, like Pollard and Faf controlled it really well in that first half. You look at the stats, it was they had 57% possession, 58 territory in the first half, compared to 40 and 36 in the second half. So you can just see the change in the way they played, and it resulted, I suppose, in the Lions being able to pick away with more points, but also get confidence off the back of it and put them under pressure. I think Quagga, Smith and LaRue really struggled under Price's box kicks, and I made a note in the first half. The Lions were losing the contested battle because they weren't putting people in the air, and every time the South Africans put it up, they'd put someone in the air and force the Lions to knock it on, or it'd be messy. And whereas the Lions would kick a big crossfield bomb from Bigger, and they just wait for them to catch it and then tackle rather than getting in the air. And the whole point of the contestables is to make it a contestable, not to give that. And they really changed that. Van der Merwe really changed his mindset in the second half, and they utilised it really well and put Quagga Smith and LaRue, and off the back of that they managed to get momentum and territory and pick away at points after the try. But I still think there were moments, like you said, they like to play. They've got to get that balance right in these test matches. If Colby doesn't knock that one on, they were just shoveling, and a little bit wishful, and eventually goes over to score, called back, and from that scrum they get a crucial penalty at 67 minutes and they work their way up the field. But there were little moments in the second half and TMO decisions that could have gone either way, that could have taken this test match out of their own hands. So I think they'll be really happy with the win and probably feel, maybe on the day they probably didn't deserve it after that first half. And the best example I can give you of that is, Price went to pass the ball to his forwards and it hits Laws in the back. They're not even looking, and that just means they're not singing off that same song sheet. But I think they'll be much slicker and happy to get away with the first effort win, but they'll be much slicker come the second test.
Might be interesting as well to see. Obviously, it was a real clear plan for the South Africans to be able to have the kicking battle with Faf de Klerk and Pollard as well. It'd be interesting to see if they do want to try marry it up and go play a little bit more, because the conditions were really good, and from what I could see on TV, I'm not too sure, but it looked like it was pretty clear the ball was actually quite dry. So my biggest thing is, do they play a little more? Because when Faf de Klerk actually as well has the ability to be able to play on top of teams, we've seen test matches against the All Blacks when they've just been using their physical ball carriers, great clean out, and Faf's been able to play, get the quick ball, open up towards their backs. Colby, you didn't really hear his name.
Didn't feature
in the game, but due to the probably the mindset of what the South Africans have with the kick-based game around Faf de Klerk. So I'd like to see them play a little bit more and giving guys like Colby and others, and LaRue and Mopepe as well. When he did get the opportunity, he did a great chip and chase, which led to that try for Faf de Klerk. So giving those guys opportunity, I think, a little bit more, especially in conditions like that. I'd just like to see them play a little bit more.
They haven't had a lot of time together. Is this a gradual building of the tactics from the South Africans through this series? We're going to keep it real simple in the first test, and then we'll add something in the second and maybe in the third as well, because they've had less time than the Lions have to figure things out. Yeah,
it looked like that in the first half. I was like, man, they are just orchestrating this so well, just plugging away with points, winning that territory battle, and they just keeping things simple set piece, then set piece pressure, big defence, Arm rushed out of the line and put an absolute huge hit on early. I think, Etzebeth was big in disrupting and making the Lions think when they were attacking line out. So it was traditional in that sense, but they actually had more line breaks, so they actually have the ability to play, and I think there were times on the edge, especially on Watson's edge, where they broke. And you mentioned Faf de Klerk's try. That should have been shut down 60 metres back. The ball, Pollard passed that ball, it hit the ground, it rolled back, and they rushed up, and the Lions did a great job of a press defence, but they forgot that the ball was the most important. They were more worried about Mpimpi and co rather than Peter Steff, who just sold a dummy and goes, and then eventually, it leads to Faf's try. But, I think their ball mindset is key, and also felt like that Delande got over the advantage too easy because they were getting ridden in tackles. So there are a couple of signs defensively for the Lions where I think, the South Africans, in terms of their attacking mindset and prowess, that they'll see more opportunities to take advantage of that in the second test, and maybe not be so predictable in terms of the over kicking and that territory-based game.
Because this on there as well, obviously Delande, he was the top carry with 53 metres and he had like 14 carries, but he only had 3 passes. So, obviously he had a mindset around holding the ball, being able to get over the advantage line and be able to gain metres like that. But we've talked about with Nani.
But that's what I mean, the post-contact metres. Like if they just chopped him, you get Watson and Curry over the ball, beautiful. But the 2 guys are hitting up high, then getting driven about 10 or 15 metres, then that's a one-man clean because they're on the back foot. So that's you've got 2 bodies attacking wise, and then they can kick on their terms. Do you know what I mean? So defensively, I think the Lions they know, like you say, 3 passes, they know what he's going to do. So just get him to the deck as quick as possible so that you can have a chance at the breakdown, which was fierce. The counter ruck was almost like if you didn't have the ball, you were going to win it.
They were a bit loose around that, weren't they? I think there was at least one time where Itoje got over the ball and his knees never got off the tackled player. And he got the penalty and it was obvious that he was leaning on there. I thought they got away with a couple there.
Yeah, yes and no. Like I think, man, for a tall man to do what he did at the breakdown, LaRue counter-attack and Quagga went down the blind side and he got his first turnover there. And obviously from the line out he gets back and gets a turnover. I think it was consistent. I always think if you're consistent, and I think you'll agree with me as a player, you figure out where the boundary is early with a ref, and if they stick to that, then that's fine. It's never going to be the same picture each week, and I think both sides got the benefit of that breakdown, I suppose, flexibility. But for Itoje being a big man to get those two crucial turnovers, and then the third one at the end of the game, he was massive. And the hit he put on Etzebeth around the 4th minute,
set the tone, eh?
Man, he was just there. He was ready. He was in the zone, ready to go.
What I loved about the test match as well was an absolute test match, like the physicality of both teams, like the willingness of how their defence and understanding that, like, we've got to win the physical battle, Etzebeth and Itoje, when they come head to head, there was a time when Etzebeth actually drove Itoje back, and so, man, for me, seeing that physicality, like, I think the depth of squad is going to be really important coming the second and third test, because this is how ferocious it is. It's going to be tough for those boys to back up those kind of performances again. So there could be injuries, and then I think the depth of the squad is going to be massive.
It was a game of two halves, though, and I know that's cliche, but I think the South African side were there, and that, like, the best example, I don't know if you remember when the Lions overthrew it, and that it's an overthrow. It's your attacking ball. The South Africa don't. Khaleesi and Pollard won the race to the gain line. Like to have that mindset, to get set, they didn't really, it was like played it, probably not tempo lineup, but it was quite a quick process. They're getting set back 10 metres and they're on their toes, ready to go. And for me, that set the standard in that first half of where South Africa are at mentally. And that's why I say I felt like the winning of that game was Alan Wynne-Jones going to the corner. It just seemed to ignite them into accurate play. They just were messy in that first half, and in the end won the arm wrestle.
There's a bit of chat about it last week. Let's talk about Rassie Erasmus on a couple of things. Firstly, seeing him in the Waterboy kit, I understand it's within the rules, but he is a World Cup winning coach. He is all but the coach by name. He's the director of rugby. That's not right. Is it right?
There's no real difference. If, like, a lot of a lot of our assistant coaches are actually water boys. In our team.
But he's, the head coach. He's a World Cup winning head coach. You've never seen anyone of that stature run water.
That doesn't mean it's wrong. If we had that mindset, we'd never evolve. So I just think there has to be a clear balance, because it can be a positive, but I think it can be a negative if you're trying to overcoach on game day and you're trying to change things on the run, and guys are hyped up in a test match atmosphere. But I feel like from what we learned and heard out of the World Cup around how he inspires and motivates players, it could be quite a positive for the group out there having his presence. So I don't think it's necessarily wrong just because of his title. I think, if anything, he's down there trying to do what he believes is right for their environment. And I think the reason it came about was maybe potentially because of the COVID situation with the coach, or I don't quite know. But I think they've got some pretty strong leaders in their group, and they're not ones that I feel would just conform. I think they'd set the standard themselves. So I don't think it's right or wrong. They'll know if it's working best. But the one thing I look at it is, it could, if you start coaching on game day, I believe, you've got to be shutting the books, probably 48 hours out, and trust that the work's being done, so that you're just in clear mind into captain's run. And, you've got to be able to play rugby on what's in front of you, and, on those instincts. And if you're trying to be coached at the same time, I think it could be dodgy. But if he's just there from a motivational point of view and keep them on task, then I think it could be a point of difference.
Because like I said, assistant coaches are actually now water boys as well. So, obviously there's a head coach, but collectively a lot of assistant coaches actually do more work than the actual head coaches. So, there's an advantage that has been probably happening for the time that I've been at the Crusaders, or even in junior at Harbour as well. Assistant coaches are on that water boy scenario, giving us, whether it be an attack, he's an attack coach, or he's a defence coach. And so having those conversations as a coach, it's pretty normal for us players recently that we've had a coach, albeit obviously not a head coach, but the assistant coaches do as much work as the head coaches. So I think it's been happening for a long time.
I suppose it's pragmatic and it's thinking outside of the box, and those are all the things you want from a guy who's your head coach, your director of rugby, or whatever role he plays within this team. You've got to have a guy, I suppose, that's relatively fit, a guy who's got enough shape to run out there. Yeah. Not all the coaches are able to do that.
No, they're not. And that's why you'll see a lot of our teams use players as well. Like if we use the Blues, for example, when we had DC and Tana is our options. They bring a lot of calm. They're captains, captain of the All Blacks, Tana, and a leader for a long time, Dan, and they know what the big moment needs, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Is it's not about coaching. It's about making sure. Sometimes you'll go through 80 minutes, you won't hear from them because they know that you're right, but then sometimes you will hear from them, and it will be more of a side conversation with a leader, not so much of a presence in the huddle. Yeah. And I think that's, you'll see the All Blacks. I think Paddy was running the water the other day. So it's about they can keep cool, calm, and they're not having the pressure and maybe helping the players out on the field. And
one thing that does as well, it's been able to, because when you're on the field, you're in the heat of battle, and so you see it from just the view that you have here. You don't see it from the helicopter view. So it's really important, I think, the coaches be able to, that when they do come on, they deliver messages. It's great for us players to be able to go and say, we actually we think we're going okay, but saying there's kick space. We don't think there's any kick space because we're running and playing well. But then it's a kind of retelling. You say actually there's one guy that's just sweeping the back, and there's actually kick space all around. So those communication things that come in from upstairs, to be able to give from the assistant coaches and the water boys that Jip alluded to, it helps us as players, and it's probably a really big moment in games when massively you need that guidance from someone else that can actually see it from a different view.
You have to understand the essence of timing as well.
Correct.
When you deliver messages, especially if they involve detail, because you got to make sure that it's been absorbed, but also it doesn't overwhelm players.
I suppose on Rasi's point of view, it freshens things up for him. Here's a guy who's been there, done that, won everything he's touched basically, and he gets to do something different in his career. That's got to keep a coach thinking and going a little bit.
Yeah, and it probably gives him a different perspective. We're talking about from a player's lens. He's been sitting up there looking down. It probably gives him a different perspective, and probably a really neat ability to review not only as leaders, but the squad and the composure that was shown in crucial moments, because he was out there. He knows what was being said. He knows the feeling, and to be able to, sometimes as players, because you're in the moment and you're in different mindsets, you might not remember it for what it actually was, but he's actually just calm in a water boy sort of mindset, he's not overly emotive, and he can, sort of review you based on that, and you can grow and learn a hell of a lot from those, probably more from that chat than 1,000 clips.
Yeah, or halftime speech.
This would probably be a bigger issue if that actually won. So that's the thing, I suppose. It wasn't like a masterstroke in that way. It didn't change everything for them that made them win that game. He is an interesting guy. I've dealt a little bit with him in the media. Very likeable, friendly, honest. He will answer your question kind of guy. Like a lot of the South African coaches are. Like I found Peter de Villiers the same way. They just say it how they see it, and they're quite clever. Now, there's been something that's come out in the media in the last couple of days. People might follow Squidge Rugby on their social media feeds, and he reckons that Rassie Erasmus, and let's say allegedly throughout this, is running a burner Twitter account where he's dropping analysis on opposition teams and the referees to try to show people or guide the narrative during the week. What do you guys make of this?
Well, I wouldn't have seen it if it hadn't been brought to the attention by Squidge, is it? Squidge Rugby. So is it really controlling the narrative? Potentially now that it's got its way to the headline. But I think we all agree there were parts of that game that were inconsistent, especially, I must admit, I watched it in around the advantage, the 8-second advantage to 20. But I mean, it's a hard, that's a referee's, right to work out what's an advantage and what's not. So again, I go back to what's consistent. If they're consistent with that on the day, then I don't think you can complain. But I think what they're having a go at here is there was a few inconsistencies. I didn't quite see it as, I suppose, as bad as it was portrayed in the clips. But I think, like rugby players, the refs will be aware of it and would have reviewed themselves anyway. I don't think this is going to put them one way or the other for the next game. They're professionals. they'll admit where they maybe got something wrong. Like it happens every game. Every game we play, you know, there would be a review and you know, communication between head coach and referees. Like it's never going to be. It's not a perfect science. Yeah.
So you spend time with the referee beforehand. You have the ability to show them a little bit of video or things that you've seen on the opposition. So you actually have the ability to control the referee's narrative, but maybe not the narrative in the media in the most part. You do have an influence officially on a referee.
Yeah. Well, you definitely.
I mean, you can put points to them, but I don't think you've got an influence. It's about having, you know, identifying trends, making them aware of it, and then you've just got to let it unfold. Because if you keep pestering it, if anything, it'll work against.
I think the important thing is, it's obviously the coach being able to put the trends in. They can send, like, they'll send analysis clips throughout the games that they've reviewed and said, oh, hey, this is what we've seen. This is the trends at the, like whether it be scrum, this guy's binding in or something like that. But then I think, to what Jip said, it's been able to put those things in and been able to manage that with the ref, because you don't want to lose the ref. The last thing you want to be able to thinking that, oh man, you know, he's a bit of a toss. I'm going to be able to, you know, be able to influence in another way and not being able to get those 50-50 calls. But then I think it comes on to your leaders as well, and them having an understanding of like what the trends have been given from the coaches, and so you're aligned, and then you're delivering those messages on the run. And I think good captains have a really good ability to be able to word it right, to be able to have a good understanding of what that relationship likes with their ref, how he is. You can have a go at him. You can probably have a conversation. He probably doesn't like a conversation, so you've got to go in a different way. So I think the conversation with like the captain, the leaders in that group, and the coach is really important when talking with refs as well.
It's also key to identify, like refs have trends. They might have, you know, 60% of their penalties come at offsides, or, you know, and then you can pick up trends, you know, and you don't have to bring it to the ref's attention. It's about you knowing and understanding where they naturally look at, what part of the field, what part of the game they look at to see if you're abiding by the rules, and then that's how you train and prep your week.
So you're thinking about that in a game. You're like, this is the guy where I can get away with something.
I think
in this place.
Not away from something, but as a captain, I think you have to think about trends and understand the conversations you've had during the week to be able to draw on it in big moments. But I don't think it's something you fixate yourself with. And again, the game's played at such speed, you're reacting on instinct on game night. And if you're clouding your head with all that, I don't think any player goes in thinking. I just think they go in as leaders to get a consistent performance on the night in terms of how it's going to be adjudicated. And you've got to work that out early. The team that always works out, it's like scrum. You know if a ref's going to put up with a few collapses or they're not. And it's about you guys either find a solution to make this work, otherwise you're going to put the ref in the game. And it's about not bringing the ref into the game. It's our duty to abide by the laws and not bring refs into the game. And if we do that and stay within those ramifications while pushing the envelope, of course you've got to push the envelope and work it out. But the earlier you do that, I mean, the better rapport you'll have with the ref.
So you're the South Africans, Bryn. Where do you push a little bit more this week in comparison to last week?
Oh, I think, well, you look at they had 14 penalties, so I think being able to figure out what kind of trends that the refs saw that they were not getting away with, you know. So a lot of them were around the breakdown, so getting a better understanding what the trends are the refs are seeing, and then why are you penalising us, and so, you know, no doubt probably the South African coaches have seen the clips and sent them through and been able to have that rapport with the refs and give them understanding, because get that idea and then you can deliver that to the boys hopefully at the start of the week, so then you can go into trainings and be able to replicate what the refs have been delivering. So I think obviously getting the information, talking to the refs around it, and then getting a clear plan around what it looks like, so then you can go on the field and you can implement what the refs have said throughout the week previously.
So what happens this week? Is there a bounce back?
I just think it's so tight. Like it was like I said before, like the execution of the game plan was, you know, one half each, and in the end it was just, you know, more opportunities to take the three, but also the mindset to go for the try, which won the game. So I think we'll see a more clinical performance from both sides. But I think from what I saw of the Springboks, I think they're a chance to bounce back and win, because they created so much, and they were probably they orchestrated their own demise really, rather than it being forced on them, you know. So those are controllables as players, so they'll look at themselves, review it, control the controllables as they say, and then probably go into this game with a lot of confidence. You know, and that I suppose, aura of not playing since the World Cup and all that, even though they played the SAA, it wasn't really a Springbok. I think they're in a good spot to potentially springboard back into contention after Test 2.
One of the cool things about this game is that it's the same place, at the same time, you're at the same hotel, you're going to the same training ground. You can look at what you did last week, and you can either keep it the same or change it.
I think the beauty around playing, consecutive test matches against the same teams, you can figure out their trends, and you know that this is the way they defend off a 5-man or a 7-man or a scrum setup. It's not really going to change. So I think the familiarity of being able to play a team and have an understanding, it'll be little tinkers, because I don't think they're going to overly change massively around their shape and everything, but I think they will find little tinkers from that one game and that South African A game as well, to be able to try and have a better understanding how they can manipulate and score points from that as well.
I think the Lions as well, just looking at them, will stay true to what we've seen this whole tour, is they've got the contestable kicking game, they like going to that, and they'll chance their arm.
Yeah.
They're here to play footy, they're here to score points, and they might go to the corner, or they might counter-attack rather than just go to a normal kicking game. So I think it's that's exciting, because knowing that and understanding that that's how they want to play, one, creates opportunity for South Africa, but two, makes it entertaining in terms of what they can produce.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, probably it's going to be interesting to see if they have that kind of same mindset as well. I thought the British and Irish Lions, like I said, had a really good ability to play between the two games. They felt like they had a little lick. If they didn't get what they wanted, they used bigger, and obviously Price and Conor Murray, when he came on, to be able to implement pressure through the kicking source. So, and especially with how much outside weapons they have with Colby and Mopepe and LaRue, getting those boys in the game on the edge and being able to play a little bit more. It'll be interesting to see if they try and play a little bit more and have that kind of same style of being able to have a look, have a go, and then resort back to Faf de Klerk in his kicking game with contestables and a variety of kicks.
I'm fired up. Are you counting down the days?
Oh,
come on.
I absolutely, because I honestly think, if you're Lions, you've got nothing to lose because you're 1 up.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you go 1-1, and then you can maybe go back to conservative. But this is the game that you can really put it all out there and chance your arm and look for that 80-minute performance. And as I say, there's going to be improvements in the Springboks, but there's going to be massive improvements in the cohesion of that group if Warren Gatland stays with that group.
Yeah. Now let's look ahead to closer to home. We've obviously got some COVID issues over in Australia. There are states on lockdown. There's been a lot of chat about getting the Aussies over here, but for how long? So now we know that they're going to come back over here. They're going to play a test at Eden Park. The government's likely to give them the clearance to come through in these next few days before the absolute bubble breaks. Then we've got a week after that. We're looking at a test match somewhere in New Zealand, whether it's Wellington, possibly on the Sunday, because Beervana's on Friday, Saturday, and let's face it, that's a pretty important time. It could be Auckland, it could be Hamilton or Dunedin, it could be anywhere. So how important to how this thing works is getting a couple of games at home before going over to Australia and playing in Perth and then possibly coming home. The All Blacks getting this first little bit in a competition which is kind of up in jeopardy because we don't know what is going to happen with COVID. Is this the most important thing that could happen in this competition, that we get these two games at home?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's exciting for the competition because of the uncertainty. For the fan, most importantly, is to get along to the games, because there is a chance that there's these two games and you don't know what it looks like going forward, whether it's canned or it's put into one state over there, or I don't know. There's so many things to consider. So I think that's my first point, is from a fan's point of view, is getting people to the ground, because I don't think we've seen sold out test matches this year. So I think the excitement of the Wallabies, fighting hard, grit, determination, series win against the French, and with a bit of spice and flavour added to some of the travelling squad and some guys coming back from injury, it does make for an entertaining package. And the same for the All Blacks, is they sort of, they've blooded a few new guys, they've given everyone an opportunity, and now it's, in front of our home ground, Eden Park, they haven't lost that. So it sets it up, it sets the competition up, I believe, for a blockbuster start. While the Lions are still playing South Africa, so they're relevant. RG have beaten Wales at Millennium Stadium, so all the other two teams are in form. I just think it's, you know, building towards what will be a great rugby championship, you know, for this year, and probably, you know, you can't drop a home game.
Yeah.
You know, it's crucial not to drop a home game.
And on that, like the fact that, you know, we obviously get to have the opportunity to play at home to start the competition well. You know, traditionally we're always hard to play at home. You know, obviously had test matches over the years, but, you know, playing a test match at Eden Park, which is a fortress for us, and then being able to start the competition really, really well. You know, even though Australia, it's a short commute for them down here. Anytime we get to play in New Zealand, it's an advantage for us. So I definitely see it as an advantage for an All Black team that built nicely, giving guys opportunities through the young guys that they blooded in, and then getting everybody a go to then play in the Rugby Championship, where you know, there's going to be a lot on the line during that as well.
Is it more exciting? Is it more mystery? What is it when you know that this could change on a dime, this whole tournament?
Well, you know, we've had to learn to be flexible since, you know, the first outbreak of COVID, and I suppose that's more your mindset is, you know, making it work. How can it best work for everyone involved in the game? So maybe the mystery adds to the excitement of the tournament. I think the form of all four teams is what's adding to the excitement for me. You know, seeing that victory of Argentina against Wales away from home, and we've just spoken about the Springboks and death. You know, we've spoken about the Wallabies and their gritty performance, and if they can string a bit of balance of attack on the back of that sort of, you know, ticker sort of style of play, that they can be a force as well. And I just think the All Blacks, although they won convincingly, you know, it's sometimes even when you're in opposed training sessions, it doesn't even look as slick as they looked against Tonga and at times against Fiji. So I think they're in a good place as well.
And I think, you know, you look at the back end of that calendar, getting the opportunity to play South Africa is, for me as a viewer, I'm just thinking, what a great opportunity, you know. World Cup, haven't played them since, you know, 2019, or 2019 was the last time we played them?
Yeah,
2019, so be able to have those two test matches in New Zealand, you know, that's just going to add spice to the competition. Hopefully, you know, we get to see a full fixture of competition, because I think having the opportunity, we love playing South Africa, love seeing that style of play that we, you know, haven't seen for a while now, and so hopefully be able to play those boys at the back end of the competition. And, you know, with the good start of hopefully the whole competition, it's going to be great to see those teams and see playing against those boys. You mentioned squad depth before, just for the Lions series, but I think squad depth for these teams, and I think that, you know, Dave Rennie's doing a great job with, you know, out of box thinking that he's doing with a few of the players he's brought into the travelling, you know, squad. So I think it'll be crucial for South Africa by that time of the tournament, when they come up against each other. It's going to be really, you know, everyone's going to be excited to see that, and it'll be, you know, what team is, you know, they've had a lot of footy, so they both should be in form, but also who's fresh and who can go deep, because they'll be serious test matches.
Are we missing an opportunity here? I mean, should they all just be going to one city to play in one bubble to take away all of the conjecture, to make sure that there is no risk about teams having to travel back and forth? They were all prepared for it, and do it in an NBA style like they had last year, where everyone's just there. And you know what's going to happen, and they can settle in, and they can really learn without having to deal with the extra issues that come along the way.
I think if it was that easy, they probably would do it. You know, they found out Friday and have tried to work on the run and trying to create an opportunity to get the games played. And I think that's the biggest motivator is, you know, where's best and what's best for us to do to get these games played. And if that was to go to one city and they'd do it, if it was able to be done. So there's just so many variables that come into it. It's not just about what you want, it's how you work it in with, you know, governments, state governments, you know, what's it called where they have to sit in hotels? I can't even, isolation, quarantine. So, you know, it's just a balancing act of that.
And I know it's obviously going to be hard for Argentina and South Africa that they're going to be away from home, but again, for the Wallabies to be able to play in Australia, you know, it's a different thing, you know, than playing in New Zealand. They get the opportunity to play in front of hopefully with fans, you know, people play in front of their people, and it brings another dynamic in how they play. They're a different team when they play in Australia, and they've got the ability to play in front of their people as well. So it's tough for the Argentinians and South Africans, because they've got to come all this way and be able to be on the side of the world, but it's definitely going to help the Wallabies as well, and especially with how they're building, what Dave Rennie's building there, and you can really get a sense of feel that the Australian rugby public fans are really behind them at the moment. So an opportunity for them to be able to play in front of their people as well.
I suppose there's always a presumption that at some stage we're going to get back to normality. I mean, normality probably is now that nothing's ever going to be normal and we're going to have to be flexible, like you said. We look forward to a World Cup in a couple of years' time where it's likely that they'll just put everyone in one nation. Should we be practicing that?
Oh, but as I say, I just think the people that are going to make decisions will be putting them in the best opportunity to get the games played. And I just don't think we can go beyond that. Like, if we could practice it, maybe. But like, we're not privy to what restrictions there are in terms of getting these teams in and around and through quarantine. There's just so much to it, and I personally think it would be unfair to comment from a personal point of view. I think they're doing the best that they can to get these games played.
And full credit to them. I don't want to be too
too
rough. They're doing what they can with what they've got. Over the Tasman, everyone's favourite Australian, although they don't want him to be an Australian, Quade Cooper. He has come into the Wallabies squad. Off the back of playing for Kintetsu, alongside Will Genia over in Japan. It's an interesting call.
Well, I think we've talked about how good experience is, and obviously, not too sure what the injuries scenario is with James O'Connor and Tamura as well. But I think any time you can get a player with that kind of experience and that's played a lot of caps to the Wallabies, it can only help a guy like Noah Lolesea. Obviously he's taken the reins with that in the French series, but if you can get we talked about with the South Africans with Mornay Stay coming back for the South Africans to help Hoggard and that as well. So I think having a guy with that kind of experience who's played big matches and has a pretty good understanding what it looks like in big matches, it's only going to help Noah. Hopefully, when they're going to give him the reins. But if they feel like they want to go in a different direction with experience, you've got a guy like Quade Cooper who's done a lot in that Wallabies jersey.
I think he's got a massive role to play in terms of prepping the team that's going to play. Yeah. And by that, I just think it's so underappreciated publicly, but giving someone like Quade of his experience of understanding playing the All Blacks, what it's like, at Eden Park, and he's been through the good and the bad. The reins to run the All Blacks as such at training and do the research, watch the clips, see how they, the new way they strike down the blind with Richie, and some of their line-out variation that we've spoken about, their phase play, the new kicking strategies. He's a true professional in terms of his preparation around that, and him orchestrating that at training is only going to better prepare them to perform on the weekend, and he'll be used, I believe, as like a mentor and I suppose a voice of experience for guys like Noah, James O'Connor to come back in and allow them to just focus on Australia and the way they play, and he'll be taking, I suppose, the guys that are outside of that 23 to really hone in and bring a level of intensity at training that is going to have them humming come Saturday and almost know what to expect before they get out there against the All Blacks. Of course, he can't orchestrate it perfectly, but he's hungry to train, he's hungry to be involved, and that to me would be a role that would just be perfectly suited for someone with his experience but also his want to have another crack.
So give us a bit of insight, Bryn. When you've got an experienced player comes into a squad like that and you're running training, the opposition, I suppose, the guys who aren't going to be in that starting 15 or starting 23, they spend a lot of time running the opposition's shape. And so a guy like that who understands multiple kinds of shape can do that far better than having a young fella coming through the ranks. Well,
it's a selfless act as well. I look at, for example, for us, a guy like Tim Bateman was huge for us. He didn't play a lot of games for us in our Crusaders when he was at the Crusaders, but the way that he was be able to keep those boys accountable, to keep them engaged, most importantly, I think, sometimes you can fall in the trap. If you're not named in that 23, you can kind of taper off a little bit and not be as engaged and as competitive as you need to be. But, Timmy did a really good job around to keep those guys engaged. And so, like, for us personally, the trainings that we had against us when it was in scenario based at the back end of the week, they broke us a lot of times due to his be able to keep the boys accountable. Having that kind of leadership role would be able to help guys and being able to be selfless. Because I think it's a really selfless act, a really selfless job, because we're all competitors. We all want to play rugby, we want to be out there. So he's still competitive, still wants to be able to give to the jersey. But I think just giving it in roles like that, it's just so good for young guys coming through. First and foremost, like what Jip said, obviously the experience of the environments. He's been to Eden Park, he's played in test matches and good and bad, so giving off those experiences. But I think keeping the young guys or the guys that aren't playing in the 23 really, really accountable and keeping them focused. a purpose, giving them a purpose to be able to come together, and the 35 players that are selected there, they're all on the same goal, and he can drive that from the reserves point of view.
So have you ever gone into a game and come out the other side of it and gone, actually, if we had had some better prep from our opposition at training, we could have won this game if they'd better understood?
I personally think if you're looking at blaming your teammates for Thursday training, you're probably looking at the wrong mirror.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I think I've finished games where we've been successful and we've had a poor Thursday training because we've been put under the pump. And it's the little sharpening of the knife that you need just to go, oh, we're not quite there yet, but hey, we've got 48 hours to get it right, and we can make some adjustments, we can nail our captain's run and then go into the game. And it's almost like that group, if you're run by a guy as senior as Quaid or someone like a Timmy Bateman, it's Thursday's game day. And that's how they drive it. This is our game, boys. If you want to be in the 23, if you want to play the All Blacks next week, this is your chance to show Dave that you want in. If you nail your role as an All Blacks player today and you prep this side for a win at Eden Park on Saturday, you are going to put yourself in a position to be selected.
Yeah, I like that. That's the difference between a journalist and a rugby player. I went straight down the negative. You spun it in the other direction, which is the way they need to be.
We've talked about it a lot, and I think, Jip, you probably talked around the Blues environment, around how much they've changed around that competitive edge and being able to have the depth, because obviously they're pushing themselves at training. You know, they want to be in that starting lineup, and that builds that competition aspect. So the successful teams get that balance really, really good, because I think you want to have that competitive edge and be able to, like Jip said, have that game day mentality, but at the same time you've got to have a good balance to be able to be selfless and get to the guys in the best position that they can. So it's a real marry up of being able to have a good balance around that, because you're right, you've got to have that competitive, you've got to sharpen the knife, you've got to be able to put them under as much pressure as you can, but at the same time be selfless enough, and probably earlier part in the week to be able to say, oh, yeah, this is the pitch you need to see, this is what you need to see, and be able to let them feel confident with that in the first part of the week. But then when it comes to that game day, training wise, the last training before you go out on the captain's run and game day, that's your time. That's your time to put your stake in the ground and say, look, I want to be playing.
I like that term, sharpen the knife. Aaron Smith used sharpen the axe in the All Access, you know, about making sure that you nail the things you're good at as well as the things that you're not good at.
Well, he's got real strong forearms, so he probably likes knives. You know, we're a bit, you know, we might just need a knife fight.
we needle in there.
He's always, oh, mind you, you got quite a good pass too. Maybe it's just
maybe
me that needs the knife.
Maybe I need an axe.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, how's the knife sharpening going at North Harbour?
It's going good. We were great. We went up to Kaitaia, had a lovely time up there. We went on a 3-4 day camp and had an opportunity to play the boys up there. So I haven't been up to Kaitaia. It was a great opportunity. There's a centenary year as well for one of the clubs that we did play at, and so we were actually the double header. We were the curtain raiser before the actual club final in that area of part of Northland, and so it was great to be able to connect with them. We all connected as one team, Northland, North Harbour, and the two club teams and the women team as well. They were all there, so we had a great night to be able to connect. And the greatest thing that I found about that is that they were so happy to be able to see the Northland players and North Harbour players come up to that part of the country, because they don't see it. They don't see it a lot. So for us, it was a good realisation of a different community that we haven't had a lot of time with, and the boys got up and had a great win. So
there it is. I knew, mate, if they didn't win, he wouldn't be that positive. He'd be like, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. They win by 40, and the old master here is like, good play.
He's already booked to stay at a hotel.
Yeah. I was just waiting for the score. I was like, oh, this is nice. Bang. There's the gold nugget.
But obviously, we went up there to get the job done, and so we got that done. And we've got Bay of Plenty as well, going to Katikati as well, a place where we haven't been. So it's great to be able to come back and hopefully get a result to lead into round 1 against Waikato in a week's time.
And I'm excited about seeing the counties back in action too.
But I think it's great from the PUs. You know, we hear so much about community rugby and, you know, giving back and things like this, but they're actually doing something about it and taking these pre-season games to communities that just value it and appreciate it, rather than it just being this slogan that goes around. There's some action behind these words now, and I think that's really exciting for where Bunnings NPC's going. Yeah,
it's going to be a good tournament. We'll talk a bit more about that next week, I suppose. In the meantime, we're coming up to the second Lions test. We're pretty excited. Once again, thank you to Bryn Hall, James Parsons. I'm Ross Carl, and that was another Aotearoa Rugby Pod, looking ahead to another exciting weekend of Lions football. Set the My Sky. Make sure you're watching it. It's going to be a cracker.